Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to be dealing with a post to my Canadian Libertarian Facebook page. This one comes from Eva RS, and she showed a link to a YouTube video produced by CBC The National, and she said, would love to hear your commentary on this video. So you know what, Eva, I'm going to do just that for you and for anyone else who pays attention to my videos. And I'm just going to dive right into it. So like I say, this is a CBC YouTube video posted under CBC The National, their YouTube channel, with CBC's Peter Armstrong asking some questions, posing some questions to Canada's central banker, Stephen Poloz. Here's the caption for this particular video. Quote, there are growing concerns about Canada's high household debt levels, some of the highest in the world. But at what point do debt concerns tip over into a debt crisis? CBC's Peter Armstrong asked the questions to Bank of Canada Governor Stephen Poloz. So let's get started.
Governor, great to see you. Thanks for doing this. Great to be here. There are two sort of competing narratives about the economy right now. One expressed itself quite thoroughly through the markets this week. You say it's a double-sided risk. Give me the case for the upside. What is the positive view of where the economy is and where it's headed?
So markets are quite preoccupied with good reason, with the threats of trade actions and how that's going to slow down China and also, by the way, the United States and other places. And all those indicators that are coming up rolling over. That's a global thing. IMF has rolled back its forecast. We all have. So that's important and it's real. And the threats are for something bigger. That's the big worry. But what is the plus side? The plus side is, well, that's all just kind of a way of negotiating, and suddenly, the minds get together, and it evaporates. So I said this 3 months ago. People were completely preoccupied about NAFTA's going to get torn up. And I said, well, hang on, what if it doesn't? We have to compare both sides of this and try to strike a risk-balanced approach in the middle.
But when we look at the economy today, is it the job growth and some concerns about the wages haven't been keeping up? Like, what are the positive indicators that make you say we can sustain this and we can, in fact, sustain a few more to get back to neutral?
Well, we have everything firing. This year...
Actually, before I even let them continue on at this point, let me just say, when he says minds get together, I mean, that's already admission that a select few of central planners get to dictate and determine the social and economic lives of millions and actually ultimately billions of people. That right away, I'm just going to point out already, Eva, that's the first mistake. But let's continue on because there's a lot more that I can point out subsequently.
Both investment and exports have been quite good contributors to GDP, despite the angst around the future of NAFTA. And so that suggests that they can only become a little stronger with that angst removed.
Actually, I got already intervened once again. These investments that Poloz is referencing, I'm pretty sure he's probably suggesting all these investments that are coming from what? Monetary stimulus programs, whether it comes from the ECB, which is a representation of the European Union, or the Federal Reserve down in the US, or the Bank of Canada, or all these central banks around the world. As we all know, because the proof is out there, and anyone that denies it, well, hey, I hate to let you know, but you're just out of touch with the reality. But yeah, all these central banks post the economic crash in 2008, they stepped up the stimulus programs, which is just a matter of ramping up the printing of money. So not based on any market fundamentals where there's actual demand for inflation of the currency because there's actual genuine growth. No, it was the Keynesian model. So there was no actual economic growth or drivers in the economy from the market. So that's where the government stepped in and said, oh, well, since there's an actual decrease in economic activity or investment from the private sector, the government will step in and take your place. But think about it. Where does government money come from? Well, we already know from central banks it comes from just printing it, which devalues and debases that currency, which makes it worth less, which is a stealth tax, a stealth way of incremental theft from the working poor, those who actually have to get that money, at the very end of all this stimulus, of all these, quantitative one, QE1, QE2, QE3. the twist. I mean, like I say, they've been using all these magical instruments at their disposal, but that's what it is. When you have control over the monetary supply, which is what a central bank does, which is just a tenet of communism, of collectivism, when there's some area of the economy where people can control and manipulate, not just the currency, but what it's worth and how much of it is propagated throughout this economic system, well, there's no longer a pretense of any market fundamentals. So already when Polas is talking, is the reason why he's so confident, because like I say, these central planners think that they have the power to manipulate so much that they don't have to worry about market forces no more, because, hey, we have complete control and complete power. This is something that they will see and recognize at some point in the future that, yeah, even with all this information and the era of big data, you still don't have the kind of power you wish you had. History has always shown, and that's why we've gone through so many market corrections and crashes, is central planners, central bankers, you don't have the power you wish you had. I mean, if you can convince the masses you have that power, I guess you kind of do. But once again, in the age of information, that's not working out so well for you, and I'm helping to push back against this kind of narrative.
Are there problems in the world? Well, yes, but there's always, as I said, risks up and down. So for now, we have to confront the data that we actually see. The household sector has remained strong. We raised interest rates, so noticeably in the last year, and everybody's absorbed that well, and so we're cruising along there. And the labor market,
the housing sector remains strong only because of these stimulus programs and these ridiculous rock bottom interest rates, which are basically meant to entice people to jump in to assuming more debt loads and more debt levels and higher debt levels. I mean, Polas will actually admit this at some point in time, but once again, I'm just trying to point this stuff out for you because Eva wanted me to clarify, and that's what I'm doing. I'm going to break through the sophistry and the legalese that Polas is trying to use, or this political language that does nothing but confuse and confound the masses. I'm here to help you in that regard.
the market remains strong, and yes, wages haven't been that strong, but they're still well above 2%. And so at least we've got that growth. We expect the next phase of the cycle to be higher productivity and higher wage growth.
The households have...
First of all, why would wages be below inflation if not by monetary manipulation? Under any free market setting or environment, wages would have to be at least on par or in excess of monetary inflation in order for there to be annual, gradual, or incremental progress, right? Any economic progress. You have to make more, right, than your expenditures for your economy or economics to actually be considered progressive in any way. But since we're seeing that actually under real world fundamentals, wages have been stagnant for 4+ decades, 40+ years. And the only way they've been able to try to negate or avoid that reality is by outsourcing a lot of jobs and stuff to these third world countries or these emerging economies, where their monetary policy or the value of the currency or their domestic workforce, it all functions at a much lower level than in our domestic populations, such as Canada or the US or the UK or the G7 or whatever countries. So yes, we've been able to offload a lot of the pain by sending a lot of our jobs overseas to some of these jurisdictions or these countries that they pay people on a much lower pay scale where we can benefit. But once again, that race to the bottom is always and forever going to accumulate and come to the point where we're all going to be way down at the bottom. That's not a way. That's not a method that you should ever use to try to raise or elevate people in regards to their social and economic policy, because it's the exact opposite of what is deemed necessary for the medium or long term. Now, short term gains, yeah, sure, like Polas, he seems to be thinking, oh, in the short term it's worked. Well, it does work out great. Just like if I went out tomorrow and I just think, perfect example, if I was so massively indebted and squandered so much of my income and was reckless in my spending and did a lot of really stupid things, if someone was willing to offer me another credit card with a, let's say, $100,000 limit, yeah, I could postpone that. And actually I could tell people out there that subsequent to that, it's like, look, I'm doing great. I'm fine. Look, hey, everything's great. Matter of fact, I'm looking at buying another car next year. I'm going to even step up and buy an even better car. But it's all based on the assumption that I'm going to have to pay off all those debts at some point in time, which is, once again, pulling from the future into the here and now. But that pulling from the future to the here and now has grave and serious ramifications and consequences for me in the future. So, present me, yeah, I'm happy. Present Polaz, central bankers, and the fact they were able to manipulate the economy and stimulate it with all this money printing, everything seems great. All the exuberance. Well, of course, if I was handing out money to my kids, like if I just freshly minted a bunch of Canadian coins, or, well, I screwed the coins, they're not worth much anymore, but, you know, paper currency of Canadian dollars, my kids, my family, anyone I handed that out to, they'd be like in that economic exuberance. Yeah, everything's great. But in reality, well, you're going to have to pay it back at some point in time, kiddies, or the price of everything that you buy eventually is going to reflect all that monetary stimulation and printing of the money. So is it really going to benefit you in the medium or long term? No, it's going to be a detriment and a hazard to your economic prosperity. But once again, we now live in this Keynesian era where it's all about now. Let's worry about now. Forget about the medium term and long term. Let's just worry about now. It's a bad way to look about things. A bad way to live your lives, not just socially, but definitely economically.
Manage these rate increases. The concern, though, is as that debt service ratio grows, as people sort of have taken on an awful lot of debt, is there a point that you're concerned at that maybe if we go to X percentage, or like, what is it that would push us from having concerns about debt to having a debt crisis on our hands?
Well, there's no magic number. That's important. You can slice the Canadian society in many different ways. There are highly indebted people that took out a mortgage 3 years ago. They have 2 years to go. Others to go last year. They have 4 years to go, etc.
So he's admitting there's differences and variables in the Canadian economy in regards to people and their economic or fiscal prudence or prosperity, right? But yet, is there multiple variables in central bank policy? No, there's only one. So Polaz, even right here, is admitting that he's either got to cater to one particular group or a portion or a segment of that group or that society and sacrifice the rest, or choose to, once again, even now where they're trying to, raise or increase the rates, so cater to more conservative leaning people who are more fiscally and financially prudent. But once again, you're going to sacrifice another area of the economy. So there is no such thing as a one size fits all, which is, once again, for the millionth time that I've said so, central planning, a monopoly on the economy, which is what a central bank or central government represents. It's a detriment to a large portion of the population. It's just a matter of them picking winners or losers in the economy. And let me tell you, they're not the kind of people you want to be picking winners or losers. Matter of fact, actual natural market fundamentals, the invisible hand, as Adam Smith once alluded to many, many years ago, that's the best mechanism for guiding people as far as their economic choices going forward. Always has been, and trust me, always will be.
Very complicated question. So as we see it, as we move interest rates up, and each time watch how that reacts. How does credit growth slow down? How much? What happens in housing markets? And I ask people to bear in mind that if we hadn't started normal.
So once again, he's admitting that central bank policies affect the psychology and the economic decisions that people in society use as a determining factor. So, central bankers, and you watch, we're going to get to it, folks, where he even admits that central bankers have always been the root cause of all of our economic woes, whether it be the Great Depression or all the many recessions that have followed subsequently.
Things with interest rates and with better rules around mortgage lending. Well, wouldn't house prices have continued to skyrocket? Wouldn't affordability been a even bigger problem today? Interest rates are a small part of that affordability issue compared to house prices themselves.
Ho, 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 ho. Housing prices and interest rates. Well, hey, Polaz, you basically just admitted, and I'm sure you'll admit it again a little bit further into this video, but interest rates play a huge effect on the psychology of people who want to borrow or purchase these homes, right? So a person, like, think about it. If the interest rate to buy a home was 10%, people, the psychology of the people would be maybe a little bit more prudent and responsible in regards to what they want to assume or take on as far as the debt load. Whereas if it's at rock bottom prices and it looks like, hey, I can enter into the market, even though historically I would have never been able to enter into the housing market, but at these historical low interest rates, hey, I can delve into the market. So you've enticed a lot of people in the market that, yeah, they can get in at these rock bottom prices. But what happens once they go up, as your suggestion, and as you're suggesting, they must. So what's going to happen to these people without all these increases in wages, which we're seeing it's not happening? And I'll deal with why the wage increases aren't happening subsequently. Let's move on.
So let's not forget what it could have been like without this.
The 2008 crisis was essentially a debt.
So let's not forget what it could have been like. Yeah, just like, oh, if I was, like I said, just as if I was really ridiculous and reckless in my spending, imagine what it would be like if I didn't have another company that gave me a bailout, another credit card where I could put more debt or obligations on my potential future and bring that forward to the here and now. Once again, yes, I'd be able to deal with the situation now. It's like, oh, I can breathe a sigh of relief because whew, at least I don't have to deal with the consequences of my bad decisions in the past at this particular time, but I'm still going to have to deal with them at some point in time. So once again, the Keynesian model, Polas is just like, all I hear is Keynes, 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 Keynes. Keynesianism. Keynesians have already been shown, I mean, well, the reality that's playing out and unfolding before us, and especially subsequent to the 2008 crashes, Keynesianism doesn't work.
Crisis. We dropped interest rates to encourage consumer spending. Is the concern that we created a second crisis to get us out of the first? And that right now what we're doing is trying to navigate a pretty sharp line?
Well, there's no question. We had a crisis. It was global. All the central banks and all the fiscal authorities acted together and prevented, I would say, the second Great Depression. So let's put up a victory sign for that.
Right.
It could have been.
Woo! Put up the victory sign for that. We avoided the Great Depression, which actually we really needed. That's actually one of those things, just like when your kids acting like outrageous and immoral or unethical. It's like, well, yeah, you could just let them get away with doing what they're doing and just, hey, let them do it. And look, you won't have any arguments. They'll be able to come in for supper, and your life going forward will be cool because, look, you didn't have to deal with any controversy or potential hardships that might result of these bad decisions or these bad acts. But once again, have you not basically given or enticed your son or the populace to actually double down on their bad investments or their bad habits or behaviors? Of course. Once again, the moral hazard thing seems to be escaping Stephen Polas here at this particular point.
Way worse. But one of the side effects of that has been.
And that way worse that he's speaking of would have been the precipice that would have actually affected the psychology of people to stop doing the same thing, right? Just, just like if you were banging your head off the wall and it really hurt. Well, that's kind of, that pain is actually the thing that tells you that, hey, stop banging your head off the wall. Polas is saying, well, hey, we put a cushion against your head in the wall, so hey, go ahead, just keep banging your head off the wall. At least at this point, it's not as painful.
Accumulation of debt, whether it was the government doing it, okay, through fiscal action, or in our case, the central bank did more, let's say, over that those years, like 2010 to 2013, 14 in there. Well, during that period, it was low interest rates doing most of the work, and that means the debt is being accumulated by households instead of by government.
Okay, first of all, I love it. He brings up government, central banks, and then households, right? But who produces all the wealth in any economy? It all comes from the households, the consumer, the people in the workforce. That's where all revenue and income is generated. Well, proper income and revenue. So whether it's the government or the central bank or the consumer, ultimately it's that individual person, it's the individual actors in the economy, the people, that's going to be on the hook regardless. So when they say, oh, well, the government was stimulating the economy and print money, well, where's the government get the money? Well, they got to tax the people, the private sector, right, that pay and fund all this stuff, not voluntarily, forcefully, I might add, But I mean, like I say, whether it's government, central banks, or the private individual who produces all that wealth, they're ultimately on the hook for all of them. Government is not some weird, like, magical third-party entity that just gets to do things and doesn't affect society. Government steals and plunders the economic prosperity of society. So if government's doing something as far as stimulating the economy, well, you're taking from the productive people now, or like I say, the unborn. Because ultimately, let me just reiterate this once again. It's the debt levels are so high at this point in time, it's the unborn folks. So yes, you're not going to hear too many protests, petitions, or class action lawsuits, or angry revolutions being propagated or initiated by the unborn. That's the thing with these central bankers and these cronies and these corporate and these government authoritarians, is they realize that, hey, if we enslave the unborn, people who don't even have any say in the matter, hey, we can put forth whatever we got to say, because who's going to argue against this? And they recognize that apparently, and I see this now, apparently most people are willing to enslave future and successive generations to benefit from them in the here and now. You're gonna suffer at some point in time, because your grandkids, even if they're not born now, if they're born and they grow up and you're still alive, they're gonna look at you and say, why would you do that to me? Why would you want to enslave me so you could have like more benefits or entitlements? Forced subjugation is wrong, and it's been wrong throughout all of human history, and it's going to always remain wrong, immoral, and unethical. So to try to pretend otherwise, like I say, anyways, let's move on. This stuff, well, I could stop this video probably every 10 seconds, but I'm going to try to let it go a little bit longer this time. I don't know. Hopefully, we'll try.
Either way, you've got debt. Right? We've got a debt overhang from this, and it's going to take, yes, a substantial length of time for us to work that down.
And in theory,
a substantial length of time to work that down. Who pulled us? Why you keep talking like, that's the weird thing about these central bankers. They talk like, sometimes it's almost like it's, oh, what, you? What, an individual? Or are you talking collectively? Because once again, when you're talking about collectivism or collectively, do you not recognize that there are many areas where people are on very different sides in regards to what, like perfect example, I'm not indebted to anyone at this particular time. Why do I have to suffer for those who are reckless or irresponsible? Stephen Polas, I guess, would suggest that, hey, you should suffer too, Bennett. Matter of fact, you're suffering even more than the people that have been able to assume and accumulate all these massive debt loads, whether it's through government initiatives, central bank initiatives, or their own personal consumption or debt obligations. But once again, why should I be held responsible or punished based on the reckless actions of central planners or individuals? That's where the free market would allow everyone, hey, you guys want to do this stupid shit? You go ahead. But in a free market environment, you couldn't screw up or override my responsibility or willingness to do the right thing and be prudent. With the one-size-fits-all, you get to completely destroy the natural incentives or the responsible people and all that entails. How much longer these people think that they can promote this stuff without turning all people into collectivists and socialists, where now it'll be a ramp up to that race to the collective bottom? Like I say, I don't know why they think that this is a good idea, but I personally, I think they're so out of touch with reality and now have so few tools at their disposal that they're just willing to put forth whatever rhetoric that they think will keep the mindless minions in masses in line and in check.
As an economy does better and we raise the rates and people try to manage their way out of that debt, wages go up and offset some of their ability to pay that down. Is that where wages become more of a concern, that we haven't seen the uptick in wages as we would expect to see with this amount of unemployment?
Well, wages are a piece of the puzzle, but there's a lot of other pieces. And the most important part of this is that this stage of the cycle, and I would say over the past 18 months, we've been in that stage of the cycle. Normally, investment would have been the key driver of growth, and that would be adding to our productivity and our ability to increase our capacity and our exports. Right. A virtuous circle. And that cycle kind of got stopped by the uncertainty around NAFTA.
Okay, first of all, with the wage stagnation, I don't know how far he goes into it in this video, but I'm just going to deal with it right here now. The reason The reason why wages have stagnated for 4+ decades is because of these globalist initiatives, which is trying to put us all on a level playing field in regards to trade. There's no such thing as a level playing field when you're talking about dealing with people or countries that are, whether they're emerging or third world. You can't place the productivity, the efficiencies, or the economic prosperity of people that are in like very established Western countries who have become used to and accustomed to and adopted to a particular way of life and a measure of value in regards to the prosperity, in regards to economics. You can't try to force them to collectively compete with people that will do so, but at much, much lower valuations in regards to their labor or their intellect or the productivity, to try to create, once again, that one size fits all. Well, we're seeing how detrimental it is. Yes, there's lots of people in many emerging or third world countries that are benefiting tremendously, but that's happened as a consequence and as a result of stealing from the productivity, innovation, creativity, and prosperity from people that have done all that hard work in Western societies, in developed countries, for decades of their life. To steal from the productive people, the people that have done the right things, and then give it to people that, even if they're trying to do the right things, no, it's always a bad idea and a bad decision to try to create some kind of level playing field when not everyone on the global stage are even close to being aligned in regards to their economic prudence, prosperity, or policy.
And we are hoping that it now resumes. In fact, that's what's in our forecast, modestly so. When that productivity comes, then you take the lid off of those wage settlements. Okay, you allow the extra percentage point or so, which typically around here we'd be expecting 3.5%.
Then you allow. So once again, apparently Polos is even suggesting that they have a direct effect on what your employer deems allowable as far as your wages or any potential raises. This is a blatant self-admission here. This man seems very much sociopathic and out of touch with reality in regards to the kind of detriment he is to millions of people.
Wage growth, not 2 point something. Right. And I'm quite confident it's going to happen. There's a lot of signs that the productivity move is happening.
Where do you see us in the cycle? If we go back to sort of...
Are all the technological innovations basically the same as they were 30, 40 years ago? No, productivity has increased and ramped up over the last few decades on a massive scale. But why aren't the workers seeing the benefit of all that productivity? Because people like you central planners, are giving it to everyone else or to these crony corporations or governments that constantly dictate and micromanage our economic lives. The people that should be rightfully benefiting from all that innovation and creativity aren't seeing those rewards. The free market. Not the cronies, not the corporatists, but the free market. The people that at least try to strive and thrive and survive in this current economic atmosphere with one hand tied behind their back, but still show that they're willing to rise to the occasion. You're punishing those people.
Of 2009 and the bottom of the markets anyways to where we are now. We're certainly nearer to the end than the beginning, but where do you envision us on that line?
Well, we're in the mature stage of the cycle because we've pretty well reached home. We're at the stage where, you know, the economy is operating where it can. There's some, you know, questions around it, but it's where it should be, and the question is, how much longer can it go? And the answer is, for a really long time, if nothing happens to mess it up. Right. And historically,
in other words, what he's saying, hey, we can keep central planning everything as long as, hey, we've got all the tools we need, right? We've got the ability to print money as much as we want, issue bonds, whether short-term or long-term, fudge with the stock market, manipulate the valuations of our currency. Like I say, they feel that we've got so many tools at our disposal to micromanage every area of the economy that as long as nobody figures out a way to prevent us from doing so, we should be able to do it pretty well. Matter of fact, if everything goes the way we suspect, which they've always been proven to be wrong, just look through history, folks. People like Polos and all them before the economic crash, they were all saying prior to 2008, everything's great. All central bankers, all these expert economists, they were saying, oh, everything's great. No, no, don't worry. And then, boom, the floor dropped right out from underneath them. And then they had to scramble to come up with a whole new narrative. So stop trusting these people and just acknowledge that, yeah, this one human being, I'm one human being too, right? And I'm fairly smart. Do you really think Polaz is so much smarter than I am that he has the inside knowledge in regards to the economic decisions of millions and ultimately billions of people? You really believe that? Surely you're not that naive. Well, not if you're paying attention to my videos.
Almost all of the slowdowns have been caused by central banks. Frankly, almost all of the slowdowns have been caused by central banks. Frankly, almost all of the slowdowns have been caused by central banks. Frankly.
Almost all slowdowns have been caused by central banks, frankly. Finally, we've made it 6 minutes and 13 seconds in this video, and finally I'm hearing some real honest truth from the central banker. I guess in that area, in that regard, kudos to you, Polaz. You're 100% right. Central banks are the very cause of the economic pains and hardships that many Canadians, millions of Canadians, and like I say, billions of people all over the world have had to experience. Since we've had central banks, they have been the ultimate deciders and arbiters as in regards to who gets to be punished or rewarded based on economic fundamentals. That should never be the case. The invisible hand, you being a good person, and what the invisible hand, what Adam Smith referred to or alluded to was, it's not the benevolence of the butcher or baker, right? So me, if I create a business, I'm going to do it for myself, for my own personal prosperity, but that's going to benefit a whole lot of other people because I'm going to have to hire employees. The consumer is going to benefit from being able to consume products or services that I provide. So it's that beneficial factor or factors that is a representation of things that I didn't plan it. I just thought of an idea, come out with it, create a product or a service, and it trickled down and benefited a lot of people in the economy. That wasn't a central planning thing. That was just an idea that took hold and benefited a lot of people. Central bankers are admitting that they basically get to dictate and determine who are the winners or losers in the economy, and a lot of times they make the wrong decision as to who should be the benefactors of their central planning policies. That's basically what Polaz is admitting right here and right now.
Because inflation pressures begin to emerge and they raise interest rates a bit faster than they were previously intended, that slows it down. But that's all about the thing about keeping inflation on track. If we're able to anticipate well and if things continue to expand as they are, there's no time limit on how this can go.
Do you wish, looking back, that you could have had even just one more rate hike under your belt by this point? Do you think you're comfortable with where we are?
No, I haven't been surprised yet by this. The debt made us wary from the beginning that every interest rate move was going to count bigger than it has in the past. And we did some more research and we expanded that in our model. So our model now has 50% more interest sensitivity in it than historically. So we're taking that on board and monitoring how we're doing. And over the last 12 months, the model has done a good job of predicting how people would react. So our confidence is growing that we've got that about right.
When the word gradual came out, you knew people were going to immediately say that means the bank is more hawkish. Are you okay with that interpretation?
Well, I have to be because the markets are never wrong, Peter. You and I both know that. But the fact...
You're absolutely right, Polaz, and your little joke, right, to suggest otherwise. This is the hilarious part. The markets aren't the ones that are dictating how things play out as far as economics go, because if that was the case, then, like I said, you would have to be willing to admit that actually nothing central planners can do other than stealing from future productivity or prosperity and bring it forward. There's nothing we can do, and we're going to have to go through a protracted recession or, as you alluded to earlier, a Great Depression. So once again, markets, yes, they're always right, and they were right in 2008. The difference is that you didn't want them to be right, and you make light of it and make joke of it, and you thought, oh, well, we could just override the market and create these stimulus programs and to hell with the market. But once again, that reality, it's going to come back and bite you in the ass, and I'm sure Polaz already knows this, but what does he care? He's not going to suffer. It's you as the lowly consumer or average Canadian that's going to be on the hook and suffer ultimately. So he can sit back in his, wealthy abode or wherever he resides and kind of laugh about whether he was right or wrong, because it doesn't matter to him one way or the other, to be honest with you.
The fact is, we're not trying to give a hawkish signal, but what we're trying to do is make people understand that the pace of getting to neutral is the thing that's we've described as gradual. First it was cautious, then it was gradual, which means that's faster. And now, as your confidence grows, you say, well, now we need to be talking about what it is that will determine that pace.
Oh, they're admitting. So we're not even back to normal in regards to like where proper interest rates should be, where the market would determine where it should be. And this gradual thing, that's the thing. They try to talk up the economy, but it's like, oh, we can only raise interest rates by a 1/4 percentage point at a time. Is that a representation of an ambitious or thriving economy when you can't even introduce interest rates 0.25%, like a 1/4 percentage point, and you're fearful that it might have upset the apple cart or affect the economy on a huge scale? He's basically, once again, these central planners, they're basically just admitting that the only way this works is if they can keep the people dumbed down, the masses ignorant and ill-informed in regards to finances or macroeconomics. And if that happens, if we can keep the lid on people who understand these things, then we might be able to manipulate the economy for quite a while longer. There is no time frame, and that's true. But Polas seems to forget that there's people like me and people like Peter Schiff or lots of other market economists or historical figures that can help elaborate and expand on people's knowledge in regards to personal economics and macroeconomics. So Polas is bet he's hedging that most people remain stupid, right? And if he's basing his decisions on our current education system, he's got a pretty good wager going on there. But once again, he's not taking into account the information age, the internet age, where information is at your fingertips and at your immediate disposal.
Much more clearly laid out now, so we've got a big definition of what used to be called gradual now in our press release, and hopefully that's clarity not just for market, but also for individuals who need to plan ahead.
I've spoken to you at several stages through this recovery. You seem more confident, more at ease with the situation that we're facing. Is it easier to be a central bank governor at a time like this, when there's still a lot of unknowns, than there was when you couldn't figure out why we weren't getting the traction that we wanted?
It's way easier when the economy appears to be behaving more as you expected. When we were searching for missing exports, or trying to find out why people weren't investing, or oil prices were collapsing, or always something moving that's unexpected, that's a much more difficult situation. Here we're in a more traditional space where central bankers have to be guarding against inflation risk, and yet giving the economy every chance it can to expand in a non-inflationary manner. Okay?
So basically what Polas is saying, now that we have the ability, that's the thing, through central banks and the banksters, now that inflation is the potential, now we're in that top end of the economic cycle where inflation might very well take place. We do have the tools at our disposal, and thanks to the banksters, where we can deny that inflationary prospect or potential by just stop lending to people, right? Stop inflating the economy, stop allowing free market fundamentals to flourish, and then we can manipulate and plan the economy so that it grows at a very slow and gradual rate where inflation doesn't get out of hand and we don't have to raise interest rates to suppress it or deny it. So once again, it's all about central planning, and completely manipulating and dictating your social and economic life. Because predominantly it's all economic, but it definitely plays a role in your social life. That's why I always say social and economic, because they are very much closely interlinked and aligned when you're talking about social and economic policies. We all have to live off of money. We have to feed ourselves, and that plays a huge and dramatic effect in our social lives. Anyways, Eva, I hope I've done a good enough job. That's the end of this video. That's like, I don't know, what, 8 seconds left. I'm sure you ain't got much left to say in 8 seconds. But I hope I've done a decent job here to try to help expand and elaborate on some of the kind of central planning narratives that Pola has put forth. And of course, this interviewer just completely unwilling to push back. It's just softballing these questions, right? No pushback whatsoever. Could you imagine if I was the interviewer and asking Pola a bunch of questions? He wouldn't be able to sit there quite as comfortable as he is and not have to be seemingly concerned at all with the fact that he's going to have to answer some very serious questions. Now, CBC, like I say, they don't care. Lob these softballs to him so that, hey, at least we can say that we did at least, you know, kind of hold these central bankers to account and question them. But when he gave you an answer, did you push back? No. So what kind of interrogation is that? What kind of pushback is that? What kind of holding the elitists to account is it when you just ask them a question, they give you an answer, and you just move on to the next question without any pushback? That's not holding anyone to account. CBC don't care about holding anyone to account, and why would they? It's a crony corporation, the Crown Corporation, that relies on forced wealth and income redistribution to sustain their whole entire business model. So why would they push back against more central planning that relies on the same fundamentals? Of course they're not going to. Anyways, Eva, I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I hope everyone else that's paying attention to it, you learned a few things as well. And hey, if you want other Canadians or anyone else to learn these things, share my videos. That's the best way to do so. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.